Okay, tell me if we are live at Chabad of Efrat, and we are excited for a shiur. Today's shiur is going to be on more spirituality on Pesach, the essence of Pesach and Matzah. Okay, today's shiur is sponsored by Yehudis and Shimon Leiter in merit of their father-in-law's yard site this Friday. Yaakov Yitzchak ben Yehuda Leib. His neshama should have an aliyah, and we should amazing good deeds in his life should be reflected, and we should all learning today's in his chus. Thank you so much, Yehudis and Shimon, for sponsoring. Okay, so today's class, like I said, is about going to be about Pesach, about the Parsha, which is Parsha Tzav. Let's dive right in. So first, okay, let's talk about the Parsha first. Okay, so this week's Parsha is Parsha Tzav. It's connected very much to Pesach. So it is like this. We've been discussing a lot that one of the essential Hasidic foundations of Pesach is the concept of humility and ego. How truly the core mitzvah Pesach is to rid ourselves of chametz, which represents inflated ego, and to eat matzah, which represents humility. And we learn that the core of chametz and matzah is literally the difference between pride and humility, which is that nothing actually changes. Chametz and matzah is literally the same exact food. There's bread and matzah, which are both made up of flour and water. Yet bread had time to rise and be inflated, which represents our ego as self, an inflated sense of self, which isn't real because it's really just air. There's nothing actually there. It's just feeling a false sense of this is my kochi the otzem yadi asas chaylazet says that my own efforts have brought me to this place, rather than the truth, which is it's just air. There's nothing real there. It's the breath, the air, and it's the breath and life of God that is getting me here. And matzah is the same exact ingredients, but matzah, we learned it was bread that was meant to be bread, but in their haste to leave Egypt, it didn't have time to grow. So matzah is bread without the inflation, without the humility, without the ego boost, with just being essential, going back to the core essence, which is to know that all I am is, bread from heaven, man, right? So that is really the core essence between chametz and matzah. And we even see this in the words chametz and matzah, right? I showed you guys in the pre-Pesach class that we spoke about this more at Siftach, at the monthly class, but we isn't it writing with the pen? We demonstrated how the word chametz and matzah are almost identical. I even have we can paint it even. So are almost identical because both chametz and matzah are made up of the letters mem tzaddik, right? Chametz, mem tzaddik. So let's spell it out. So we have chet, mem tzaddik, chametz, and then mem tzaddik, hey. Not bad. Okay, so here we go. Look, mem tzaddik, identical. Chametz, right? Matzah, identical. Wrong way. And the only difference is the ches and the hey, right? So the ches and the hey are almost look exactly the same. The only difference is, we said, is the opening in the hey. That matzah takes that ches and makes a little opening. And that opening is the reminder that deflates you a little bit, right? It's like popping your bubble and deflating the air and remembering above to look upwards to remember somebody with a hey is somebody who can pop their ego a little bit and remember that everything is from Hashem. Now, that is really the essence of what Pesach is all about. Pesach, we're obsessed with ridding ourselves of our house of every crumb of chametz, right? Any crumb of chametz has no space for it, because chametz is pride, it's ego. And we learn that when there's pride and ego, there's no space for Hashem. And similar to the class we're learning on Tzimtzum is that when I take up all the space, there's no room for another. So it says, Ein ani v'hu cholim lador, it says, and that when you are so full of yourself, there's no space for Hashem. And so we need to make that crack. And sometimes we do it on our own by having humility and recognizing that everything is from Hashem. We do this in so many of the mitzvahs. So wake up in the morning and say Moda'ani, to open up that window, to remember that I'm alive because of Hashem. When we do the mitzvah of taking a piece of challah, it's taking off bread that we made on our own with money that we earned, and remembering and taking up a piece and saying Chal LaHashem, everything I have is truly from Hashem, even though it seems like it's my effort. I know that without Hashem's blessing, I could have nothing. I could work for months and make nothing. So I recognize that the true reason I have bread is from Hashem. And so many mitzvahs that we do are to remind us to have that opening in our ches, in our pride, to remember to be matzah. But the real question is, if that chametz is so bad, right? If chametz is the root of all evil, and we learn that pride is the root of all evil traits, all negative traits that we have truly stem from pride. If we're angry, it's because we forget, it's because we have too much ego. If I'm angry at something that happened, if I'm upset about something that happened, it's because of ego. Because if I was truly humble, I would know and open to the fact that everything is from Hashem, then I would know that this is meant to be, this is good, that this is what Hashem is giving to me intentionally, right? If I feel bad about my image and how I look at my body image, that's also ego. Because if I would trust and look up to Hashem, I would know Hashem made me exactly as I'm meant to be, right? If I'm sad about aging, if I'm lazy, if I'm angry at somebody, anger comes from, it says anger is like serving avodah zarah, Because if I'm angry at a person for doing something to me, I'm denying the fact that it's them. I'm saying I'm having ego by saying they're the ones who are making this happen to me, rather than recognizing that Hashem is the one making this happen to me. They're just the vessel. So being a hay is about bringing Hashem into everything, bringing the awareness that everything that flows down to this world is truly the act of Hashem. And one more example is jealousy, right? Jealousy is a trait that it's natural, but it brings us down. And jealousy, again, is thinking that you have something that I should have, right? If I have if I'm giving a shiur and someone else is giving another shiur, and people are going to them instead of me, or more people are going there, I might feel threatened or jealous, and all those feelings that eat me up inside. But that is also stemming from ego, from feeling from a false sense of the fact that those are my, right, feeling like this is my parnasa, right? Someone's taking my parnasa, someone is taking my people, right? And not recognizing that Hashem sends everyone exactly the parnasa they're meant to have. There's enough to go around, right? That there can be 100 clothing store designers, and Hashem will send you exactly what you're meant to have, and no one's taking your parnasa, right? So all of these traits we learn that come from ego. Now that leads us to the big question, which is if chametz is pride and it's the source of all negative traits, then why do we have chametz all year long, right? Why not spend what? But we have other. Why not rid our houses, rid our homes and our lives of chametz all the time? Why only on Pesach? And so we want to understand what makes chametz not okay the rest of the year, and what makes Pesach unique and different. So to get to the core of that, we're actually going to learn a message from this week's parsha that the Rebbe teaches on Parshas Tzav. So Parshas Tzav in this week's parsha discusses the avoda of the Kohanim in the Mishkan, right? Because we finally began the service in the Mishkan, and Parshas Vayikra is really, most of Vayikra deals with the offerings and the avoda and the services of Mishkan and many of the mitzvahs as well. And we talk about the avoda of the Mishkan, of the Kohanim in the Mishkan. They had and we see a huge contrast that in this parsha, we have the Kohanim doing very high services, right? Bringing sacrifices to Hashem, atoning for things, lighting the menorah even, they're allowed to. And then we have a mitzvah where the Kohen has to lift the ashes of the karban and also take out the garbage, take out the ashes far away, because now they're no longer good. And he has to take them outside of Yerushalayim, even all the way outside, somewhere where it's not holy. That's really taking out the garbage. So the question asks, and it says that because he has to switch clothes for this, right? So he's in the middle of his avoda, he brought a karban, now he has to change to a different outfit. And Rashi brings down that that's the person that you can't wear the same outfit when you're serving the king his wine and when you're cooking it in the kitchen. Right, when one is a task that seems lower, so you need to have a lower sort. It seems like a lower level work that would require less expensive, less nice clothing. When you're serving the king, you need to have nice clothing, and it has to be nicer than what you do when you're taking out the trash, right? So the Rebbe says something really powerful that we learned from this. That first of all, we learned that that we're all able to be kohanim to Hashem in our own way. So we're all able to learn from the idea of the kohen in every area of our lives. So this is really the idea of not being too humble at all. That a kohen might begin to be too much humility is actually detrimental. So if we would be matzahs the whole year long, it would actually work to our detriment. And we actually learned that Moshe Rabbeinu was actually too humble. And when Hashem asked him to come and take the people out of Egypt, he said, "Who am I? Don't ask me." Rather than saying, and because of that, actually, Aaron was the one who merited to be the one to serve in the Beis Hamikdash instead of Moshe Rabbeinu, because he didn't feel up to the task, because he had too much humility. So too much humility makes you feel like a shmata. And you can't be a shmata, because then you can rise to the occasion when you're needed. And not only that, sometimes we confuse humility with laziness, right? With not wanting to push ourselves to do the effort. So we say, "Oh, don't ask me, ask someone else. I'm not good enough for that." We need to have a certain sense of, yes, if I'm being called on to do this, I can do it, right? A certain sense of confidence and self-confidence to be able to say, if Hashem has asked me to do this, if something is needed, I can rise to the occasion and not say, "Oh, I'm not good enough for this job. I can never teach," right? You know how long it took me to teach and to post my recordings. In the first few years, I would listen to myself after, and I was so, we don't like the sound of our own voice, right?
Yes.
It's just cringeworthy. And then my double chins and the angle of the camera, and I wouldn't post it, right? So that wasn't humility, right? That wasn't like it's not good enough to post. That's pure ego, right? It was about me. And I really had to grow a lot to learn to say that I don't have to be perfect. Perfect is the biggest enemy of done, is the greatest enemy of done. But not only that, there's a big growing curve in being too humble, that I'm not good enough to teach. Like, there's so many better classes online. I'll just send them Rabbi YY Jacobson's class. Why would anyone want to hear my class, right? That was really how I felt. So I'm like, why would I post my class? There's so many better teachers online. So it took me a long time. I would delete a lot of my classes. I would listen to it and be like, oh, cringe, delete. It was very hard for me to post. I would crop out a lot because I didn't like the way I sounded or the way I said it, or a lot of likes and ums and hand gestures and touching my hair. And it was really hard for me. And then really, so too much humility leads you to not spread good in the world. When you say, I'm not good enough to teach. And the Rebbe is one of the biggest teachings of the Rebbe, Lubavitch Rebbe, is that if you know Aleph, teach Aleph. You don't have to know the whole Aleph base to teach Aleph base. If you know Aleph, you teach Aleph. When you know Beis, you teach Beis. Whatever you know, you're supposed to share. And so there's a beautiful teaching of a big tzaddik, Reb Simcha ben Shischa, and he said that every person has to have 2 pockets. And inside each pocket, he should have a little piece of paper. And the paper in the right pocket should have the word Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam. The whole world is created for me. That we should wake up every morning and say, I woke up today because there's something that I can do that no one else can do. And I have to say this to myself. And something that sounds like pride, but it's not, is when I was asked to give a talk on a Friday night for a campus convention in Crown Heights called Pegisha. And there's thousands of campus students from different, the Chabad Shlichim bring for this convention. So I'm like, okay, sure, I'll teach Tanya. I love teaching Tanya. Then I see the schedule come out and I'm talking, there's like 10 different lectures after the Friday night dinner that people can choose from. At the same time I'm talking, YY Jacobson is talking. And I said, why would they do that to me? No one is going to come to my class. Like I felt like garbage, right? And the truth is, it really was hard for me. I was like, why would they do that, right? He's incredible. I really just listened to the content and then kind of say to my own words and add my own thoughts and my own experiences. And like 15 people came to my talk. And I was like, why would they come to my talk, right? So that was humility. But in that moment, I kind of realized that there is nobody, that YY Jacobson is a better speaker. He's way smarter than me. He's better at everything, but I can do it in a way that he can't, right? That there's something unique that I am that he's not.
Prettier.
I won't argue with that. Baruch Hashem. So there's made me realize that it suddenly hit me, and this is something I've been developing in this opposite of humility. That seems like the opposite of humility, but it's MS, that you wake up in the morning and you know that Hashem didn't and made everyone unique. And there's something about the way I teach that even though it's not as good or as professional or as brilliant, it's a difference that he doesn't have, that I have something that he doesn't have. There's something unique that every individual has that no one else can replicate the way that I teach, even though it might not be as perfect or as good, that no one else can replicate that. So Bishvili Nivra Olam means you woke up today because there's a mission that only you can do that no one else can do. And for that person, right? So everyone is drawn to different things. And that really has given me the courage when I think about that moment all the time. That gives me the courage because often I listen to Rabbi YY Jacobson's class and I say, like, he said it better than me. Let me just forward him his link. And then I realized that he may have said it better, but I said it in my own unique way that someone might connect to more because it might be more personal, might be more raw, might be more vulnerable, and it might just talk to you in a different way. Maybe maybe it's faster, right? Feminine, whatever it is, I don't know. So that really gives me the courage and the pride, the kosher pride, right? To have that in one mind. So he says in your right pocket, you should have a paper that says Bishvili Nivra Olam. And you should take it out when you need a boost to say, when you want to say, someone else should do this job, right? I'm not good enough to do this. No, I can't run that. I can't help you. That I'm not good enough. When someone asks you to do something, you're like, no, not me, right? And we feel it all the time. And he says in your other pocket, in your left pocket, you should have a paper with the words, Anochi Afar ve'efer. I am but dust and ashes, right? Because that is, who said, the pasuk, the Maimer Chazal B'Shvili Nivra Olam is from Gemara Sanhedrin 37b, and Anochi Afar Ve'efer is from Bereshis. I want to say Perik Yudches. So I want to say Avram. I want to say Avram Avinu or Yaakov Avinu. Yeah, Yaakov said, "I katonti mikol chasadim." Right. It sounds like something Yaakov said, but maybe it was Avram Avinu, who's after the war with Sodom when he felt that he had no merits left. But we learned both of them. So they're both true. So how could you be, the world was created for me. I'm the center of the universe. The world revolves around me. And Anochi Afar Ve'efer, because they're both true. And we have to balance the two. Yeah, but who said it? Abraham. Okay. Was it after the war with Sodom and he felt that he had no more merits? Okay.
The first thing that came up was the whole thing about Anochi Afar Ve'efer versus Bishvili Nivra Olam.
Yeah.
I find funny.
Yeah.
He's answering someone.
So being aware of the both opposites is really the key, the balance. And Pesach, in a way, is a time so we need to have a level of knowing that the world, Hashem made me because there's something I can do. But that could lead us to dangerous places, right? Because pride, if it's in the wrong way, pride can lead us to really horrible things. Pride can lead us to feeling, like I said, first of all, that our successes are only mine. And that and even worse than that, in my opinion, is that my failures are mine, right? If I give this year today, no one shows up, to feel that that's because I'm horrible and not because Hashem sent whoever's meant to send. And we take on so many things as from a sense of pride that can become ugly. Pride is feeling that it's me, an inflated, a false inflated sense of self, rather than remembering that I'm just a vessel, that I'm here, I'm a unique, beautiful vessel, but at the end of the day, I'm a vessel from Hashem. And that everything, that the way things work out, the way that things turn out, whether they're bad or good, is
it's Hashem. It's in the story of the three angels.
Okay, good to know.
I was looking at what happened before it, so I could figure out what it was about.
So it's Avram Avinu. We solved it. So, sometimes it's easy to say, right? It's easy to be too humble, and it's easy to say, I can't do that. I'll never manage. We're unable to, right? Sometimes it's more convenient to say, ask someone else, right? I'm not able to do that. And that didn't. And sometimes our humility exempts us from our responsibility. And we learn that anything Hashem puts before us, if we see a situation that needs help, if someone comes to us, it's because we're able to help in some way. And we learned from Batya in the story of Moshe Rabbeinu that she didn't have to be concerned about how she saw Moshe in the water, right? Moshe's basket floating in the water was too far for her to reach, physically too far. But she wasn't humble and said, I'm not going to stretch my arm out. There's no way I can reach. She said, I'm seeing this. I'm hearing a child's cry. I have to do my part, which is reach out my arm as far as I can. How the baby is going to be saved, that's Hashem's problem, right? Whether I'm successful or not, that's Hashem's issue. My issue is that I hear a child crying. I hear a person in need. I reach out my arm as far as it goes. So when someone asks you, rather than saying, I'm not able to, you may not be able to, but that's not your concern. You still need to reach out your arm as far as you can. So you can say, and this is something that I'm learning a lot, is a lot of times, like someone, I'm afraid to take on a new project of a person who needs me because I don't have the time to save them. That's a God complex, right? I was saying I need to save them. But what I'm learning to say is what I can do, right? Someone is saying, this person needs this. And rather than saying, no, I can say, what I'm able to do this, and this, and this. How is that helpful, right? Someone taught me that. That's a really good way of saying I can help you while setting a boundary, while not saying no all the way. So I can't do everything to save you right now because I know that it will put my family in a bad place because my family needs me first. But I could say, I can't make dinner, but I can order pizza. Would that be helpful, right? So I do that a lot. I say, I can bring you breakfast. Is that helpful? I can connect you to this person who can. So stretching our arm as far as we can. And who knows, maybe Hashem will make that miracle and will, right? The Rebbe says that Batya just stretched out her arm. And if she hadn't done that, who knows if we would still be saved from Egypt. So let's bring this back to the Parsha and the Kohanim and all of that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about false humility, a really great story that says that a holy rabbi entered an empty shul one day, and he went to the Aron Kodesh and he said, Hashem, who am I? I'm Anachi Afar Va'efer, I'm nothing. And then the chazan heard that walking down, and he heard the rabbi's confession, and he also went to the tzaddik, to the Aron, and he said, Hashem, who am I? Kadosh Baruch Hu, what am I? I'm nobody, I'm nothing. He screamed it out loud so everyone could hear. Then the Shamish hears him, and he joins them at the ark, saying, Anochi, right? Hashem, who am I? I'm of nothing. I'm a zero. I'm a nothing. And the cantor whispers to the rabbi, look who else. See who thinks they're nothing now, right? Look who also thinks that they're a nothing. Meaning, like, he thinks he's so great that he could be a humble. Who does he think that he could be a nobody like us? So Golda Meir once told somebody, don't be so humble. You're not so great. Right? That's so good.
She has a lot of
Good quotes. So even though true humility is valued in Jewish thought, too much humility, like Moshe Rabbeinu denying the task, was Hashem at some point just said, enough, right? He said, enough, go do what I told you to do, right? Enough humility. That humility has an end. So now let's connect that to the Parsha, and then we'll connect that to Pesach. So in the Parsha, we learn that the question asked, Ashley, is why didn't a different Kohen bring the garbage out rather than the same Kohen? And that is really to have that balance, to say that a Kohen might feel like he's higher than everybody else because he's doing this job. And for that Kohen, taking out the garbage is reminding him that you're not too great for anything, right? You are a vessel for Hashem, whatever Hashem needs. And a Kohen who might feel like I'm not worthy enough to do the avodah, I should just take out the garbage. Like, I'm not a perfect person. So for him, he's saying, no, you're worthy. One does not negate the other. It has to be the same Kohen doing both avodas to remind us, and the lesson in humility, that too much humility isn't good, but too much putting yourself on the platform isn't good either. And it was that balance that kept the Kohen in check, to remember that yes, he's a Kohen, but he's also not too great. The Kohanim were also the ones who mopped the floor. A big part of their job was mopping. They had most of their work was a lot of their work was not the fun work, right? Plucking chickens, cleaning blood, mopping the floor. They were the ones who cleaned the Beis HaMikdash, and they're the ones who took the garbage out as far as they can go. And that was not to make them feel low and broken, but to tell them something even deeper than that. It's a balancing act, right? That's even more than that, who's to say, and this is really deep, who's to say that we're not the ones to decide what act to Hashem is more important than another act? And the truth is that to you it might feel like it's a greater thing to bring a korban and to light the menorah, right? And to sing the songs and offer prayers to Hashem, to bring the ketores, right? And then to bring out the garbage. But to Hashem, they're equally important. One is not more great than the other. They're equally necessary, because if someone doesn't do that, then it can't get done. So it's not the dirty work. That act is the preparatory work, is actually considered in halacha like the mitzvah itself. If somebody prepares to do a mitzvah and then he doesn't actually fulfill the mitzvah, he's actually considered as if he did the mitzvah itself. So the preparatory work, the bringing out the garbage, was the preparatory work to bring the next korban, but it was necessary and just as special to Hashem as the korban itself. So you might feel like it's lower because we have a sense of pride, but truthfully, both are just as holy. And I feel this, honestly, when I train myself to feel this, I get to work in the mikveh as a balanit for women, right? And the most beautiful part is benching the women, giving them brachos, right? Being the one to make their experience beautiful. The worst part of the job, or that seems like the lowest part of the job, is picking up hairs off the floor. Because in America, there's cleaning ladies that work round the clock, but in Israel, the workers can't come in at night. So even though they come every morning and clean between rooms, if we need to get the room ready, we're the ones preparing the room. It is so special for me. Every hair I pick up, I think this is a schus. This is a beautiful schus that I can make the mikvah a more beautiful experience for another woman. And my friend, who's a balanit, Dvorah Leonid, shout out to you, in New York, in Manhattan, she also feels the same way, even though she doesn't have to, because I'm pretty sure that there's a cleaning lady there working around the clock in this gorgeous Manhattan mikvah in the Upper East Side. It's stunning. So she also said, every hair I pick up is like a schus. It's like a treasure. And that's like true knowing that who's to say that one act is greater than another act? We don't get to decide. Mitzvahs are all precious to Hashem, right? It's like taking care of our children, right? If it's not like, well, I want to do the fun parts, not the other parts. We're so blessed to do every single part when we truly recognize, right? I'm blessed to do every part of raising my child, waking up in the middle of the night, because it's a precious moment. I'm so lucky to do all of it. Who's to say that one is greater than the other, right? Only the mother is the one we say that, when it's the mother, when sometimes you could be holding a baby, right? It might be your baby, but when the baby has a smelly diaper or is crying, when whoever you pass it back to, that's the mother, right? The one who does the dirty work, that's the one who truly loves the child the most, right? Well, so you see who the true mother is when the baby's crying or the baby is a stinky diaper, who the mother or the father is, sorry, mom or dad. So we would know that because that is the person who loves the child the most, who's ready to do all the parts, not just when the baby's cute and cuddly, but when the baby's crying, the baby has a smelly diaper, because the most honorable, really the honorable ceremonies, right, are nice, but sometimes we have to put on our clothes, roll up our sleeves, right, get our hands dirty, and do the jobs that are not as fun. But to Hashem, one is not greater than the other. And that is really what the mistake of Korach was. And we discussed is that Korach was putting the Kohanim at a pedestal, thinking that their avoda is more important than mine. But Hashem puts us, whatever avoda we're meant to do, wherever we find ourselves, that's what is expected of us, and that's the holiest thing for us in that moment. Okay, so that's really a connection to the parsha of remembering to balance humility and pride. And the fifth Chabad Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, he once said that just as a person has to know his shortcomings in order to grow, he also has to know his positive qualities he possesses. But when you do a cheshbon nefesh, and Chassidim and all Jewish people, right, we're supposed to do a cheshbon nefesh before our birthday, which means writing down, truthfully what we need to work on, how our month went in terms of all areas of growth. Before our birthday, some people do every Rosh Chodesh, some people do it every Adin V'Cheshbon. It's a Jewish concept. Before Yom Kippur especially, right? I'm not saying I do this, but we're supposed to. I used to when I was single. So he says, just like you make a cheshbon nefesh of all your shortcomings and all the areas you need to grow on, and be aware, being self-aware is part of being a chassid and part of being an aware mensch. And you also have to make a list of all of your positive qualities. One is not more important than the other. Because how can you serve Hashem if you don't know what positive qualities you have to make the world a brighter place? How can you give back? That's maybe even more important, is to know the qualities that Hashem gave you. And ego is saying they're my qualities because I'm so great. And humility is saying, I have this big list of positive qualities that Hashem gave me. So humility is actually saying, Alyssa, these are all my strengths, and this is what Hashem, the strengths that are from Hashem, not from me. Hashem could take them away, like Moshe Rabbeinu said, and realize that he is the greatest man, right? He is one of the greatest leader. But he said, if Hashem had given them to Aaron, he would have done a better job with it, right? So that's knowing my greatness, but knowing that it's from Hashem. Hashem could take it away like this, right? In a moment, I can lose all of the gifts Hashem gave me, right? Every gift that I have is all from Hashem. So to know your greatness and to know that it's a gift from Hashem to utilize so you can share it and you can make the world a brighter place. And that's really one part of that balancing act. So we learned this from the Kohen about not getting to pick and choose the popular job, the less popular job, to just do what is asked of us, even if we don't feel good enough for the job, to say, well, the world is made for me. And if I saw this, even if I'm Batya, I can save this Moshe and maybe save the future of the Jewish nation. Okay. So that was the Parshas Tzav. I bless all of us to know our strengths, to feel the gifts Hashem gave us, to feel the kochos Hashem gifted us with, and to be able to always know that and to remember that they're from Hashem, and to wake up every day knowing that I have a mission that only I can do, and to be able to have all the things that we need, the gashmias, physically, spiritually, so that, and all of the time, all of the kochos, all of the resources that we need to utilize the greatness Hashem gave us to make the world a brighter place. And that is what Chayrus is. Freedom, which we're celebrating, which is we're commemorating on Pesach, is being able to maximize and utilize the gifts God gave us to make the world a better place. And to do that, sometimes we need to, to move all the boundaries. Hashem needs to bless us with parnasa, with materialist sustenance, with health, with emotional health, with spiritual health, with physical health, with mental health, with nachas, with all the things that we need, and all the kochos and strength, right? And the resources that we need so that we can utilize our potential to its fullest. So I bench all of us to have all that we need and to be liberated from anything that holds us back from using the gifts Hashem gave us. So true humility allows us to be the greatest person that we can be.
Amen.
Okay, part 2. Who's ready? That was part 1. Whoever got to go, you got to go. No, it's not about me. So the part 2 is connecting that to Pesach now. So now we're going to, so in the last class we discussed, this moment ago, we discussed the difference balancing humility and pride and how we need to have one in each pocket and bring one out when we need some humility to remember that I am just a vessel. And before I come to a class, often when I'm feeling the least empowered, like least prepared, or ready to teach a class, I turn to Hashem, or I try to remember to turn to Hashem and say that Hashem, I'm just a vessel. So fill me with what you want me to give over, because right now my I had a crazy morning, I had a crazy night, I didn't sleep, whatever it is, and I don't feel ready to teach a class. So I'm just a vessel, right? So it's not about me. It's not about how well I deliver it. So please just fill me with whatever you want me to share. And those classes come the best. Want to grab the cake from Melvin? Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to learn why on Pesach we go to an extreme of not having any ego or pride, which is so important for us to function and to not feel too small to rise to their occasion, and why on the rest of the year, if ego is so negative, and when we have our pride, it means that we're denying, we feel that it's an inflated sense of self, and there's no room for God. Why the rest of the year do we have fluffy big challahs, right? Why do we say to have big fluffy challahs at our table? Why not have matzahs every Shabbos? Why the fluffy challahs? Why not scrub our souls and our homes clean from chametz? And we learn that cleaning for Pesach is not just cleaning our homes from chametz. We learn that it's an internal act of cleaning our souls from pride and ego that are unhealthy pride and ego. All of it, really. Shmutz, getting rid of all the shmutz, right? It's an internal process. Even if we're not making Pesach, we still clean our neshama from chametz. We still want to let go of any unsubscribe from all of the unhealthy, toxic, unsubscribe from those subscriptions that we unknowingly subscribe to all year.
I feel very old sometimes.
What email lists? You unsubscribe from email lists, not just from YouTube channels and unfollow. You unsubscribe. If I say unfollow, I don't even know what on TikTok is. How do you follow? You follow on TikTok?
I don't follow TikTok.
I don't either. So okay. So here, what is the fuss about matzah? And like I mentioned before, the craziest thing is that the reason given in the Torah that we eat matzah is because this is it. I have to read this for you in Parshas Shemos. Let me grab my chumash. Okay. Matzah zu. Actually, this is in the Haggadah. Matzah zu she'anu ochlem al shum ma. The matzah that we eat, we point to the matzah al shum ma. Why are we eating matzah? Al shum shelo hispik batzek avoseinu lahachmitz ad shenigla aleim kvod ad shenigla aleim kvod something. The revelation of Hashem. Let me open it up. Who has the Haggadah?
Oh yeah, just
We
right on
can
me.
find it. on
Okay,
our phone.
so look up matzah zu shanu ochlam al shema achu. I have it written down somewhere.
You know, I'll share with you my question and answer.
Okay, wait 1 second. So this is what we say in Haggadah. We say, why do we eat matzah? Because shelo hispik, there was no time for the dough to rise, because Hashem had revealed to them and said it was time to go. They're in a rush. Now that kind of means, that seems to mean that if they had one baked matzah 1 more hour earlier, then we wouldn't be cleaning for Pesach. We'd be eating challah.
Doesn't make so much sense because Hashem tells them to
Pesach
make
would be
matzah
completely
before
different.
that.
Right,
They have a commandment
right.
to make
They have a
matzah.
commandment to
They
make
just
matzah.
happen to not
And
do
could
it.
you imagine, like, someone made dough earlier because they happen to have dough, right? All of the Jewish people are like, let's make bread to prepare. So Pesach would be told, can you imagine, what would Pesach even be without matzah and cleaning for chametz? We would just be having like a Seder talking about Pesach. Would be so fun, right?
We have this image of like
Right.
people grab their
Bread.
bread out of the oven like they didn't know that was happening. But
Okay.
a few seconds
Pesach,
before, Hashem actually tells us to do it.
Matzah zu shanu ochlam al shuma. What is a matzah for? Al shum shelo hispik b'tseikam shel avosenu. Because the dough of our fathers didn't have enough time lahachmitz to become chametz. Ad shenigla lehem melech malchei amlachim. Because until Hashem revealed himself to them and said, time to go. Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu ugalam and redeemed them, like it says in the Torah. Vayofu etzabatzik asher hotziu mimitzrayim ugos matzos kilo chametz ki gorshu mimitzrayim lachlu lihisma hameya v'gam seidu lo asalem. Right? Says that they baked the bread and it didn't become chametz because they were sent away from Mitzrayim. Paro also chased them out, right? And they didn't have time to wait. V'gam seida, and they didn't have enough time to prepare food. That's what it says. So it goes way deeper than that, right? And this is the coolest, one of the most beautiful teachings I've ever seen. Are you guys ready? Okay.
Yes.
So here we go. Like we said, a certain sense of healthy knowing that the Hashem made me with gifts that only I have, and pride and ego is healthy and important. And that's why all year long we need to have challahs. We need to be challahs. And we also have to remember when we can make our challah, to take a piece and burn it and give it to the Kohen when Mashiach is, when we have the Beis HaMikdash, or burn it to remember that even though I have all this greatness and wealth in my life, it's all from Hashem. Why on Pesach do we eradicate it completely? Because on Pesach, we said that we go to the word. The word Pesach means to leap, right? And it's a very vulnerable stage we have in Pesach. Pesach is when we're birthed as a nation, right? It's our time of rebirth. It's a time when we were taken from the lowest place. It's a very vulnerable state where we went from one state to another state in a crazy transformative way. So in this moment of intense transformation, right, in the foundational moments of becoming a nation, where Hashem took us from being slaves to Paro, in one moment, within a couple of hours, we were connected. We are Hashem's servants, free to serve Hashem and go to Eretz Yisrael. In this place of vulnerability, we have to make sure that in that vulnerable state, in this big transformative space, that no ego could be mixed in there, because it is such a sensitive space to be in. And physically, we see this, that we said that normally growth has a Seder Hishtalshalos. It has a chain, it has steps. And I want to go from here to here. I make a list of what I need to do to get here, right? If I want to be a big speaker one day, I have to learn how to speak. I have to take courses. There's a whole bunch of things I need to do to get there, right? I have to work at it. But on Pesach, that's called walking. On Pesach, the word Pesach means we're leaping. We're going from one state to another state and skipping all of the steps. When I'm jumping, right, I could fall. It's very possible. It's the most delicious cake ever. Chametz. I made it. Last week and froze it. It's a coffee cake with melted chocolate. Delicious. Worth it. So, okay, I'm going to cut that. Okay. So in this transformative and vulnerable state, when we're leaping from one state to another state and skipping all of the steps involved, right? When we jump, we can fall. We're very susceptible to fall. We have to make sure that in that state of leaping, of birthing, of huge transformation that didn't just occur in that initial year, 2000, in the year 2448, it also occurs every year where we have this crazy power given to us from Hashem every year in all of Nisan, and most intensely on this huge revelation that happens cyclically every single year on the night of Pesach. In this time, we have the ability to transform and to in a huge way by leaping over many of the natural steps needed. And in this space, we don't want to mix any chametz into this. There can't be any chametz. And now it gets even deeper than that, okay? So now, not just we want to make sure that on Pesach, and that's why on Pesach, it's a cleanse, right? It's a cleanse by saying, right now, I'm in a vulnerable state. We're having this huge transformation. We have to make sure that we are pure of any chametz and ego. But even more than that, we learned that Pesach cleaning is about making space to receive the light. Hashem is giving us light from top down. In the month of Pesach, the revelation is not like it is in Tishrei, in the where we do the avoda, where the avoda is in Hasidic term is Zerusa dilatata, an awakening from us that we do teshuva and then Hashem responds. By Pesach, we learned that we were naked. It says you were naked and afraid, naked for mitzvos. We had no merits. We did nothing, and yet Hashem birthed us. Just like birth comes without any merits of our own. right? We didn't do anything to earn it. So in this moment where Hashem is giving us light from above to below that's undeserving, all we can do is clear out space to make room for it. And to make room for Hashem and all the gifts Hashem gives us, we have to remove ourselves, remove our ego so that there's room for Hashem. Because wherever there's ego, there's no room for Hashem, right? When you're saying, for example, an example is that when you're saying, I'm going to take care of this, right? Like, I want to get married, right? I'm going to take it into my own hands. I'm going to be the one worrying about it. It says when Hashem says, Hashem could say, you're worrying about it. I don't have to worry so much. You're the one, you're taking care of it, right? I see that you're worrying. When we say, Hashem, listen, you're in charge. You do it, right? It's not me. I'm just going to do my ishtablis. I'm going to do my part physically to make a vessel. And you're the one who's really doing it. Then Hashem's, okay, I'm going to do this, right, for you. So the more we have to make space and clear our ego and clear as much of our own sense of inflated self as we can to make space for the gifts that come from above on Pesach, on the 14th of Nisan, every single year, renewed from even before Mitzrayim, right? We learn that the energies of the year are cyclical. And that the energies of Pesach were there even before the Jews were freed from Egypt. And that's why it happened that year. It's a cyclical energy that spirals upwards. So actually every year the energies shift. And the story to demonstrate this is that when the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, who wrote the Tanya, was in prison, he came in and there was no, they put him in a cell that had no window. So he never knew what time it was. And there was a story where someone came in and he asked them something and he said, how do you know what time it is? And he told them the exact time to the minute. And they said, how do you know? And he said, well, because the energies of Kedusha shift every month and every day. And the 12 hours of the day and the 12 hours of night are the 12. And in each, so just like there's the 12 months of the year, and we learned that the energies, the letters of Hashem's name, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, shift. I have 12 different combinations. Also during the day, the 12 hours of the day, there's a different combination of Hashem's name and a different flow of energy. So based on the flow of energy that he was perceptive to and being able to sense in the light, he said, okay, I know what time of day it is because now I'm sensing Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, and in 1 hour I'm sensing Hey, Vav, whatever it is. So Pesach as well, that's how it works. The energy shift. And in Pesach, we actually know that the energy flows in the most direct way. It's the only month where the energies come to us in a direct way, Yod, Hey, Vav, and Hey. And that flow of tremendous energy is at its peak when the moon is at its fullest, which is on the 14th of the month. So this tremendous energy that's given to us, this tremendous gift from above, our job is to clear space for it by removing chametz and having no shred of ego. Chametz meaning ego, no shred of self, to make as much space and to be a complete vessel. We learned that each step of the Seder is to bring us closer to being a complete vessel, to receive this crazy, intense light of transformation that allows us to break free of any boundary and any Mitzrayim, right? Because leaving Mitzrayim is something that is an internal process. It's leaving our own Mitzrayim. It's leaving any boundary and limitation in our own life so that we can break free of all of that and leap to whatever stage we need to be at to be the greatest version of ourselves, right? To be unlimited, to be able to express all of the gifts Hashem gave us unlimited in an infinite way. And so, to break free of that, one of the things we do is tevila. We dip in anu matbilin, where we dip twice. Dipping is dipping in the mikvah as the same words as bittul. So the concept of humility in Hasidic terms, or in really Hebrew terms, is bittul. Bittul meaning that I am batul, that I nullify my own sense of self to submit. It's a sense of submission, that I'm just submitting to whatever Hashem is going to take me, right? That's what we need to do. That's what true humility is. When I'm dipping, I'm saying I'm submitting, right? I'm just like when I dip in the mikvah, I'm batul, I'm letting myself be held by Hashem. I'm letting go of everything. I'm removing all my senses of self, all the coverings and all the masks, all my clothing, which all my senses of individuality, just to submit for a moment to let know that Hashem is carrying me always, truly, and even though I'm not always feeling it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's what on every step of Seder is like that. So the matzah actually represents the humility. That's why it's flat. It has no inflated sense of self. It's just simple. It's at that foundation. And because we're in this foundational stage, even if in a foundational stage of a marriage, right? We can't mix anything else into it. That's why in that first year, a bride and groom, right? You have a child that just finished her first year, Jaina. So in that first year, right? We don't want to mix anything else in. That's their time to have that guard to protect their time, right? That's why a husband gets sent home in the Shana Rishona, right, from the army to go home for the mikvah. In his first year, there's certain laws to protect them because they're in foundational stage. They're in this vulnerable, formative stage of their marriage, and they're a precious, formative stage of their relationship. Later on, right, things that are fine, right? Like I always say, when I'm seating guests at my table, I say, okay, you're married long enough. I don't have to put you guys together, right? So when you're like newlywed couple or your first few years, I'm always going to see you together because I know that it's so important. Later on, it's okay if for 2 hours I'm not sitting with my husband for the meal, right? But in the early stages, there's differences. So in this early formative, precious stage of our relationship, there's a few different. So I'm going to break down now the reasons why even though chametz is and having that sense of knowing how worthy we are and how great Hashem, the gifts Hashem gave us, and being grateful for those is important. On Pesach, because we're in this foundational stage where we have to guard that and protect that. B, because we're leaping from one state to another state, and that's a vulnerable state where we have to make sure that there's no chametz. 3 is because we want to make space to receive the light of Hashem, the light of Hashem that Hashem is giving us. And to make space, we clear away any sense of ego. And 4, it's a cleanse. It's a cleanse. Sometimes we have a juice cleanse or a water cleanse or fasting, right? Not because food is bad, we need food, but sometimes we'll do a water cleanse, or someone will do a 3-day juice cleanse, not because food is bad, but because they want to have a moment to step back so they can re-enter something in a healthier way. So when we step back from something and we cleanse ourselves from it, now we can re-enter our relationship with food or sugar or whatever it is, that we're going back in a way with more sensitivity, more appreciation, with more in a much healthier way than when it consumed us. So anything in life that we find consuming us too much and dragging us down, right? Sometimes we need to pause for a little bit, take a little bit of a detox, like a social media detox, right? Social media is a powerful, helpful tool, but if it consumes us and it makes us feel comparing ourselves to other people, feel bad about ourselves, it makes us feel indebted to like post every single day, like we owe the world a favor, and it stresses us out. That's when we just state, okay, I need a social media detox right now, a month, a week, whatever it is. And then we can come back to social media and just have it work for us, not work against us, not ruin our lives, right? So we can say, I'm just going to post, I'm going to use it. Social media is an amazing tool, right? We're sharing Torah and Chassidus with so many people right now on social media, right? I'm using YouTube. We're going to be posting it on Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram, and so many people are going to be learning from it. But if it becomes a place where it makes me feel stressed out beyond and horrible, that's when I need a cleansing and a detox to re-enter it. So that's Pesach. It's a cleansing from chametz so that we can build back up to chametz after Pesach, actually, and then re-enter our connection with chametz with pride, with a healthy way, by saying, yes, I have greatness, but it's all from Hashem. And that is actually the ultimate. The next stage after Pesach is actually to bring the korban of barley, and we, which is brought every single day of the Omer, of counting the Omer. Maybe not. Maybe it's the offering that was brought on Shavuos. All year long, the offering is wheat in the base of Mikdash, but on Shavuos they brought the Omer, which is barley, which is Michael Behema, which is animalistic, because we're going to talk about that another time. Okay. We have no time for that today. Okay, so now that we understand why on Pesach we have to get rid of all ego, now we learn something crazy. We're going to go back to what it says in the chametz in the Haggadah. Okay, this is so cool. There's 2 ways to get rid of chametz. One way that we're used to is to search for it and get rid of it.
And eat it all.
My son told me last night that he's getting rid of chametz like the grasshoppers did. He came excited to tell me. And I said, why? He said, I'm eating all the nosh. He wasn't kidding. He literally ate a bunch of nosh thinking he's helping me get rid of chametz. So to eat it all. So that's one way. So let's do that way. Okay, so then there's that way. But now I'm going to talk about the 2 other ways. So the other way is to search and get rid of chametz. One way is to look for chametz and get rid of it, right? To look for in your home, and then go through each room, find where all your kids hid wrappers of nosh, right? And in my room where I had crumbs where I eat, right? And then get rid of it and clean it. In our soul, that means to search for all those subscriptions and follows and all of those ideas, those chametzic ideas that I connected to this year, that I attached myself to this year, and to let go of them and to put them away and to donate them and to recycle them and let go of them and put them down and say, that's not a good idea, right? For example, the idea that, I need to be doing this and this to be good enough. The idea that I need to look a certain way to be worthy enough, to be beautiful enough, to be attractive, to be worthy. Then I need to be doing a program every single month to be a successful Chabad Shlucha. That's a chametzic idea, right? Those are ideas that are not emes. All these things that I connected to that bring me down, that cover up my connection to Hashem. And that's just the beginning of all of these things that I take onto my soul that are not emes. All of the beliefs in the world that I need to have a certain amount of money, that I need to look a certain way, that my house has to be a certain way, that my car has to look a certain way, that I need to have a certain degree to be successful in the world. So many values of the world that we subscribe to unknowingly. Like I said, like the emails that you don't realize you subscribe to. You're like, why didn't I start getting this garbage email, right? Like, why am I getting this garbage to my feed? So all the voices, and also the voices in our head, the inner voices of negative self-talk by saying, you're not enough, you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you're not a good mom. I need to be doing vacations like that family to make my family happy. Right? I need to be being a better mom. I need to be making better dinners, right? So many things that we have chametz and shmutz that we just have to rid ourselves of. That's the first way, getting rid of chametz, searching for it and saying, being intentional and saying, I'm throwing that out, right? I don't need to compare my family, my mom, my parenting to other people. I need to be doing the best I can, right? And all those values that we have and all the toxic values that society tells us that are MS, right? The toxic trends, like I said, the societal trends that we think are necessary for our well-being, and we realize that they're the opposite. The next way is incredible. The next way of getting rid of chametz is that you don't actually have to search and get rid of any chametz at all. Meaning chametz, meaning pride. The next way is that there is such a great revelation from above that there is no space for ego at all. That there's so much revelation of godliness. Those are those moments when you can't talk, when you're speechless, when you feel humbled by Hashem so much that I don't have to get rid of my ego. I have a moment that comes from above, from Hashem, that makes me speechless, it makes me humbled, it makes me cry, it makes me awestruck, and that there is no ego in that moment. My ego is banished by itself. Suddenly my ego crumbles and I realize that I'm literally just being carried by Hashem, right? Those moments of those miracles with revelations, where suddenly I see that Hashem is directing every moment of my life. And in that moment, I'm like, I suddenly feel like everything changed, right? So I don't have to get rid of that. I suddenly am connected to MS. I suddenly remember and realize, right? I don't have to do that work. You have those moments when you're humbled by Hashem's greatness, by the revelation, where you suddenly see like, wow, Hashem really is running my whole life. I don't have to worry so much, right? It's all from Hashem. And I was really so worried. And so those moments when our ego is banished by itself, those moments where we suddenly have a revelation from Hashem. Now, the only reason that ego ever exists is because Hashem hides himself, right? And makes room for us to feel that we're in control. And that was intentional, because the whole class we did on Tzimtzum last week in the Tanya class was that Hashem hid himself from us, covered this light, right? The light is still there, but he covered it for our sake so that we can have more of a sense of self. So there can be independent beings choosing with free choice to have a relationship with Hashem, right? But in that moment, if Hashem reveals himself, so this is actually what happened on the first night of Pesach, when Hashem initially redeemed us from Egypt in the year 2448 of creation, right? And that night, this is when we go back now to the words. Let's go back to the Haggadah. Yes.
I just pulled up one piece of it. Where do you want
that piece?
The same piece?
Yeah, the same piece. So now we can read that with a Hasidic lens. Now we're going to reread that verse of when Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim and we eat matzah. We're going to reread that now with all the knowledge that we have, and we're going to even get deeper into it. So matzah zu shanu alchem. This matzah that we eat, al shum ma, is because of ma. Now ma means, hold on to ma. Ma is a Kabbalistic term for like ayin, like yesh ma'ayin, like I am nothing. So chachma actually says is koach of ma. That initial inspiration, ma, is being a vessel. It's saying, what am I? Anochi afer. Mem hey, exactly. Matzah without the tzaddik, exactly. I am nothing. Ma is the koach ma. So matzah zu shanu ochim. This matzah we eat is al shuma, is because of humility and bittul and being, who am I? I'm nothing, right? Without Hashem. Al shum shalo, and so then we answer why. Al shum shalo he speak b'tzeikam shalavasenu lahachmitz. That there was no opportunity for there to be any chametz. Because there wasn't a chance for any chametz to come. And because of the revelation of Hashem, that Hashem revealed himself to them in that night with crazy miracles. Hashem literally freed them from Mitzrayim, had Paro, the one who was refusing, no matter how plagued he was, for years to even let any Jew go serve Hashem in the midbar, chasing them and saying, just go, go, go. And when they saw that crazy revelation, they couldn't even have fathomed how I can go from being a slave to being free. So many of them said it's not even possible for me to be free, right? And that's why they chose to stay. When they saw that revelation, there was no room for chametz. There was no room for ego. Suddenly, there was no room for self. They realized that Hashem is everything. Hashem is running the world. So that revelation from Hashem on that night, that intense revelation, made it that there was no space for there to be chametz or ego. So, like it says, "V'yof was a batzek asher atzivim Mitzrayim ugas matzos ki lo chametz ki garshim Mitzrayim lo lechu lehismamea kamsei laslam." Right. So al shema that there was no opportunity for them to be chametz, and that's that revelation from above that Hashem literally says Hashem revealed himself to them in such intensity that chametz wasn't a possibility. Because ego, when you have Hashem, you don't even have a chance to talk. You're so awestruck when Hashem is filling them and showing. If you could see God and hear from God, right? If you see and talk to Hashem, Hashem's talking to you. Suddenly you're like, okay, I'm nothing, right? Whatever I thought was me, I realize that I'm just a nobody. I realize the greatness of Hashem, and it makes me feel not that I'm a nobody in a bad way, but that I'm going to submit to this Hashem, right? Whatever Hashem says, I'm just going to do. So all of my own thoughts that I had about myself, suddenly I'm like, okay, whatever Hashem tells me to do, I'm doing. No ego in the way, no telling, right? No false ego, no false humility. Whatever Hashem says to go, I'm going to go. I'm going to just get out of here, right? Whatever this Hashem says, because you see these miracles that Hashem is doing, right? The crazy miracles that were occurring. So when there's that intense revelation, suddenly there's no room for ego anymore, and it vanishes on its own. I'm awestruck, I'm humbled, and I just realize that I'm just going to have no calculations and just do whatever Hashem says. Often we feel like, okay, why should I do that mitzvah? Is it actually good for me? Bittul is when I just say, okay, Hashem made me. I'm just going to, bittul is the act that we value so intensely of chametz, that the foundation of doing all mitzvos is ideally the greatest level, which is Tzav, which is in this week's parsha. That even though there's so much depth and beauty and layers and rewards and for doing mitzvahs, the foundation of it all should be from a sense of humility and humbleness and bittul and saying, I don't understand this mitzvah like a chok, like I may not understand this mitzvah like mikvah, right? It makes no sense. It is very difficult, all the laws of mikvah, but Hashem made me. Hashem made the world. So I'm going to trust that Hashem knows what's best for me. So if Hashem said I should do this, I'm just going to trust Hashem and go for it. Then I can learn all the beauty of all the mitzvahs and add that on top of that. And that is the 4 cups of wine being an addition to the 3 matzahs, which are the foundation of our relationship with Hashem, and the 4 cups of wine, which add all the beauty and the flavor and the connection to the mitzvahs. But it starts with Tzav, that Hashem commanded me to do it. I'm going to do it like a servant. Because Hashem made me, and if I truly see how it is, it makes no sense to do other than what Hashem said. He knows what's best for me, right? And then I don't want to stop there, because the Chachamim said added that it's mandatory to have the 4 cups of wine, because ultimately that's not why Hashem made us. He had enough angels serving him with blind faith. He says, I want you to use in your individuality and your own expression and your wine and your flavor and your richness and your femininity and your connection and love to enrich that relationship with Hashem. But the foundation of it should be like somewhere at the core should be, even if I don't understand it, that's what Na'aseh v'nishma is, right? That even if I don't understand Na'aseh, I'm going to do it, and then v'nishma, then I'll add the mashma'ut, mishma contra mashma'ut, meaning and flavor. And that's why women are the 4 cups of wine, where that flavor and that depth, that feminine, we're not really woman, feminine, and the masculine is just doing bittul. We see that a lot, right? Sometimes, like, at least in our relationship, that my husband's connection to mitzvahs is like just doing it, and I always challenge him. I'm like, well, like, or even a minhag or a chumrah, and I'm like, but does that even make sense? You know, I want to internalize it and understand it more. And we understand that we need a balance of both the matzah and the wine. Anyways, this is a tangent.
What's very interesting is that it actually answers the question I had.
What's your question?
Question is, in when we say matzah zu, we say because it doesn't have time to rise.
Yeah.
But if you look a few parakim earlier,
Then Hashem already told them to make
Hashem tells
matzahs.
them to make matzah. It's
Right.
not like it was just,
Right.
you know, it was in the oven. Oops, we don't
Right.
have time for the challah, and they bring
Right.
it out the door.
Right.
So what you're saying is that it wasn't that they didn't have time; it's that they had become so butthole that
Yeah.
they listened.
There
to
was no
the
option for-
commandments
yeah.
of Hashem.
Yeah.
My dad
Yeah.
actually really liked.
Okay, so this concept of ma, actually we see this ma being bittul. When we learn chachma is the first of the 10 spheres that Hashem created the world with, we learn that chachma is actually 2 words, and Kabbalistic, if you break it down, it's the power of ma, of humility. And that's why chachma is inspiration and ideas. And that comes, you can only have new ideas when you're not expecting it, when you're not trying to think of it, right? So inspiration comes when you're a vessel. When you usually get your ideas when you're not when you're in the shower, when you're taking a walk, when you're davening, right? Usually that's when suddenly you have like all these ideas. So it's when you're open to it, when you make yourself a vessel, suddenly you get these ideas. Anyways, why am I saying that? Because the idea of ma is actually at the core of all of the Seder if you look for it. So the 4 sons, what do we say? Chacham ma hu omer. Chacham, what does he say? He says ma. He says, I'm a vessel, right? I'm a vessel. I'm batzel. I'm submitting to the light, to the greatness of Hashem tonight. Every one of the 4 sons have the word ma. Rasha ma hu omer. And it each takes on a different flavor. Tam ma hu omer. And Sho'ena Ladea Lishol, we learned that he says that he has to borrow. Someone who doesn't have the ma. Not all of us have the ma. Not all of us have that bittul. What do we do if we don't have it? We borrow it. The Lishol, to ask the 4 questions, we say, is that we're borrowing the ma. Because it might not be, we might not feel it truthfully, but we can borrow it. We can say, Hashem, lend it to me. Lend me this bittul. We can act like we're pretend or borrow it, and when it's not really ours, and then we digest it and internalize it, and it becomes ours. That's why you're allowed to borrow things from the Seder, if I'm not mistaken. So borrowing, asking the 4 questions as a question, it means that even if you don't have the bittul, you can borrow it, and you can and then internalize it. And eating the matzah represents internalizing that, eating the bittul, eating that foundational nullification and submitting to the greatness of Hashem. And we see this idea of ma constantly throughout the Seder. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh, right? Ma. So every time we hear ma, we're like, oh wow, this is what it is. It's submitting. It's being a vessel. It's saying, what am I, right? What am I? I truly am Hashem's all the gifts of Hashem, all the uniqueness of how Hashem created me to be. So this is why on the first night of Pesach we actually, that's when you have a mitzvah to eat matzah. In the Torah, the mitzvah of eating matzah is only on the first night. That's why people are extra careful with having handmade shmura matzah on the first night of the Seder specifically, because that's when you have the instruction and the commandment, because that's when the revelation of Hashem's greatness came, so that there was only room for matzah. No room for chametz at all. And the rest of the Pesach, you don't have to eat matzah. It's just that first night and then 10th revelation. And why do we have it? We want it to be as simple and as foundational and as basic as possible. So that's why handmade shmura matzah is matzah that was untouched by other layers that cover up that essential. It's just basic. It's literally just water and flour and nothing else. And it's mixed together and it's rolled and it's made in the oven. There's no machine, there's no juice, right? So in other matzahs, matzah shira, there might be juice, which is okay for the rest of Pesach, right? It might be machine made, but on that first night, we want to connect as much and internalize that idea of internalizing that, like, it's just the vessel of Hashem, right? And not mixing anything into that. So that's why people are more careful with that first night. So last thing about matzah is that, it actually says when Moshe was speaking about, when Moshe also said about himself and Aaron, v'anachnu ma, and what are we, right? It was a rhetorical question to say, what are we? We are ma, we are nothing, right? We are just ayin, we are yesh me'ayin, we are created from Hashem. All we are is the light and divinity of Hashem. So matzah is the power of two things. We eat matzah, and that's a paradox. The paradox of matzah is that we say that we're eating matzah because it's humble. It reminds us of our humility and our humble beginnings, and it reminds us how small we are and how flat we are and how nothing we are and how we were slaves. Remember how we were slaves, right? So many parts of the Seder remind us of our slave mentality. The Marar reminds us of how bitter in the slavery. The Chorosas reminds us of the fact that we were slaves. And then we have the opposite in the Seder and with the matzah itself, right? We have wine and we lean to remind us that we're free. So we have things that remind us that we were slaves then and now we're free. But the matzah incorporates both. The matzah, it says it's the bread of humility, but it's also the bread of freedom, because it reminds us how quickly we were freed. It reminds us that ultimately at our core, we really truly are free. And that in a moment Hashem can take us out of any limitation that we have, and we're truly not limited anymore by anything. So the matzah actually incorporates both of those. That is a paradox, because it incorporates slavery by reminding us how flat nothing we were, and also incorporates, right, because we don't want a fancy bread, and it reminds us that we are connected to infinity, that we are infinite, that in a moment we can be as unlimited as we can. So it explores both of those ideas. And that's actually another key theme of Pesach, of the Seder. Min ha-meitzar karasika anani b'merchav. Yeah, we said meitzar is the same thing as Mitzrayim. That min ha-meitzar, would we say this? Min ha-meitzar, we say min ha-meitzar in Haggadah. From poverty, right? Min ha-meitzar karasika. And I love that pasuk. It's from Tehillim, if I'm not mistaken. From the Meitzar, from Mitzrayim, from the depths of limitations and the depths of poverty, I call to you, karasika, I call to Hashem, anani b'merchavka. That is Pesach, that we come from the depths of limitation, and Hashem answers b'merchav, with expansion. So we constantly go in the Seder from narrowness, from flatness, to expansion, to leaning. We're like going from dipping maror and then leaning and drinking glasses of wine poured to us and having this gorgeous Seder, right? We're going from constriction to expansion, and we're constantly mirroring that. And the truth is that they both come from the same piece of matzah. The same piece of matzah is the meitzar, is the constriction, and it's the merchav, it's the expansion, it's the greatness that Hashem had, and the revelation. It reminds us of the revelation that Hashem had on that night, and that greatness that we are, to teach us that suffering and liberation are two sides of one coin. That meitzar, that they are both two sides and they come together. The liberation comes after being oppressed. And this is really deep, really, really deep. And that whenever we look around the world and we see a dark world that feels like a meitzar, it feels like we're drowning in these depths of scariness, and every day there's just more piled onto that, more tragedy, more darkness, more pain, more strife, more discord amongst Jewish people, amongst Jews and Arabs, amongst left and right and everywhere. And we just see chaos and confusion. The Rebbe says not to despair, because on the other side of that, from meitzar comes merchav. From that place, when we call to Hashem, Hashem sometimes is just waiting for us to call out to Him. And sometimes Hashem has to break us like a matzah. And we learn from one of my favorite teachings of the Kotzker Rav is that there's nothing as whole as a broken heart. And that's for me the deepest thing in the world, because there's nothing as whole as a broken heart. And there's nothing as broken, he says, as a whole heart. Because when we feel whole and complete, and there's no room for Hashem, and there's no room to call out. But sometimes Hashem has to break us a little bit to remind us to open up and call out to Him so He can give us the expansion He wants to give us. My son just repeated the story, or my husband, and my son repeated a story about the tzaddik who came, and there was a man who had nothing. Every day he just had enough to have water and potatoes for his children to eat. And the tzaddik told him, I want you to feed me and my people everything that you have. And then the man was forced to call out to Hashem. and then Hashem gave him tremendous wealth. There's a man who came, he asked him for wine, for alcohol. Mashke didn't have any, and he said, gave him water, and he just davened to Hashem, and it ended up, he said, this is the best thing I ever tasted. He gave him a gold coin and another gold coin, and he kept filling up the water. Anyways, the message of that story was that the tzaddik said, I had to go to him, and the tzaddikim, the student said, why did you go to this poor man whose children are starving and crying for food, and asking him for the last morsels that he has in the house? And his children, it says, we're starving and crying and saying, we have nothing to eat, we can't go to sleep, we're so hungry. And he said, because he wasn't calling out to Hashem, he didn't feel like he's in a narrow place. He felt like he has everything he needs, right? He felt like he's full. He has everything he needs. And Hashem wanted him to cry out. So after that, he davened to Hashem and he cried out to Hashem. He said, help me feed my children. And Hashem answered him with merchav. So sometimes that crack that is given to us is not a bad thing. Sometimes when something dark happens to us, it is bad. It feels like bad, and it's painful. But sometimes it's Hashem wanting to give us more and wanting us to remember and to open ourselves up to turn to Hashem and to cry out to Hashem and to be answered with tremendousness. So if we remember that all of those things are sometimes to break us a little bit, sometimes things happen to break us open and to uncover greatness within us as well, right? Sometimes inside of us is tremendous reservoirs of koach, of strength, of ability to communicate, to teach, to so many gifts that we don't even know that we have because we never had to go deep. We never were broken open. So sometimes you have to crack open a nut to find that flesh and the meat inside. So sometimes there's greatness within us that needs to be cracked open, and we need to pull out and find that emunah. And we can only find that when something like that happens. And we learn that we don't need Hashem to do that to us, to break us open. We can do it ourselves. On Pesach, we don't, God forbid, need Hashem to break us. We don't want Hashem to ever break us. It says we're not supposed to ask Hashem for Yisurim, for anything hard to bring. Even if afterwards we thank Hashem, we say, wow, I see why that happened to me. It brought me to a much greater place, to merchav, to expansiveness. We don't need that, and we shouldn't ask for that. Instead, we should humble ourselves, make ourselves matzah, and we should, like my grandfather always says, "V'Kadosh Baruch Hu matzi leinu miyadam." Hashem, his cute part was that Hashem, whenever they make us into challah, amdeleinu chalaseinu, Hashem makes us back into matzah. That was his thought. I don't even know if he knew how deep it was, but sometimes we have to make ourselves into matzah, which means that take the ches, where sometimes we forget to have that opening, and break it open and make it into matzah, and then we feel broken in a good way. Broken by saying, I'm not whole because I'm not whole without Hashem, right? I need to always remember that all my wholeness is only because Hashem is giving it to me. So I'm only half of a coin. I'm only half of a person. And that's also why we gave the machzas a shekel, to remember that I'm only half in a good way, in the most greatest way, because if I'm half of Hashem, I'm infinite. If I'm a whole meat, right? Nothing is whole, as broken as a whole heart. If I'm a whole me, right? I'm very limited. But if I'm half of an Hashem, my partner, I'm as great as can be. I'm infinite. The world is my oyster, right? The world doesn't stop me. The ocean can split for me. Anything can happen. I'm infinite. So when I'm a half a person, and I remember that I need Hashem at every moment and to turn to Him, that is what Pesach is all about. So it's only on that first night that we have to be completely, right? That completely submissive, because it's that intense light that comes from above. And the rest of Pesach, actually, we still have no traces of chametz whatsoever for 1 week. And after that, we actually bring back chametz, and intentionally, we work on our animal soul. And we grow, we bring back chametz and ego so we can serve Hashem with all of the kochos that we have. So, l'chaim, it's a lot of information. It's very deep. And hopefully this will take your Seder to a deeper level. And if you want to go along with this, then you can buy the Seder of the Chabad, the Gutnick Seder. You can buy any Haggadah that has Chabad teachings. It'll have all of this. It'll go through everything and teach you about every single level, right? We said the Haggadah starts with Hey Lachmanya, with Hey. Really, Hey is the core of Pesach as well, because Hey is really the essence is Hey, right? So we have the Hey being in 5, the 5th part of Pesach being Haggadah, the Haggadah Lapincha, right, telling over the story. We start that Haggadah with Hey Lachmanya, so we have this theme of Hey as well. And if you get a Chabad Haggadah, and even English, they sell them in a store in Big Tar called.
I have one here.
I have a whole bunch. I'll show you them. There's also Jonathan Sachs Haggadah, which is incredible. And you can experience this and learn it throughout the Seder and have a much more internalized process and realize that it's steps that we're doing on the outside, but they're also inwardly directed into going through all of these amazing stages. So I bless all of us to be vessels, to have that we should receive so much light from Hashem, and that we can leap to all the places that we want to get to overcome any limitation. And that if we're doing it on our own, if God forbid, somebody needs to get out of a tragedy or a health issue, that, there's steps to do it. But if we connect to infinite, we can jump over all of them. When we're connecting to Hashem, we can leap and jump over all of the steps needed. So let us connect to, so be submitting to Hashem so he can lift us and bring us over all the steps needed. And let us just picture where we want to be and daven to Hashem to take us there. And not limit Hashem to saying, well, I need this to happen. I need this to happen. A, B, C, D to get there. I don't need all those, the doctor's appointments, right? The money, the thing is, I need that, but Hashem doesn't. So let me be submissive, say I'm just a nobody. Let me connect to Hashem and daven for that picture and say it, verbalize it, because hey is speech. And he got it to Rabbi Pinchas talking about the story of freedom. So let us verbalize and manifest where we want to be to get through any limitation that we have in our lives. And let us just picture and tell Hashem, I'm not going to tell you how to get there. You take me there, right? Submit. I'll do my part because Hashem wants me to act as though I'm doing my part so that I can make a vessel by doing my part. But ultimately, Hashem could skip all the steps involved, just like Hashem skipped all the steps and just took us out in a flash of an eye without even having any time to do anything. So let us really wrench everybody that any limitation that is covering, that is bringing you down or bringing you from true greatness, any physical limitation and any emotional blockage, any spiritual blockage, any psychological trapping, anything between you and another person, like we said, the 4 cups of wine, really we should be able to be, each one of you and everyone listening to this and everyone watching this should be able to be taken completely free in the blink of an eye. It can happen in a second. It doesn't have to be the long process you think it needs to be. It can be in a moment. And I've seen it happen where to so many people that they could never have imagined they could go from one state to another state as quickly as they did. And we just have to be able to submit to Hashem. Bless you. Thank you for joining me. I'm so honored, really, truly humbled by every person that shows up here, every person that watches this shiur. It truly humbles me. It makes me feel so grateful. If you liked this talk, then you can watch the next class. The class that about the 4 cups of wine, which really helps us understand. It was already, but I'm going to link it here in the next class. The 4 cups of wine, which tell us how to climb the 4 steps of leaving 4 stages of freedom, of limitations, of boundaries, to climb out of those through the 4 cups of wine, representing the 4 different imahos and how each one of them takes us to another level of liberation. Watch that class. You can also watch the class about the whole month of Nisan and unlocking the potential of like really connect in every single day of Nisan. So watch those classes and subscribe and leave a hi, because I like to know that I'm not talking to a screen. Write a hi, just make a little comment.
Do you have
and send it to other people. And you can also sponsor. Any class can be sponsored, and any sponsorship is really appreciated. You can email us. All the information is below on how to sponsor. Thank you for joining.
Nice. So wait a minute. How do I could listen to this in America, obviously.